cat in the wall, eh? Okay, now you're talking my language.
Do you ever drunk Baileys from a shoe?
Oh, great. Thanks, Mother, for replacing the baby aspirin with LSD.
Right, welcome into The View from C-Deck, and it's a freshly shaven Just Matt here with the Haas, and we're going to talk some NFL Combine as it relates to our Buckeyes that are going to show up this week as the Combine starts, Thursday or Wednesday. They'll be going in there and getting measured and poked and prodded and slapped in the ass by a bunch of people and asked if their moms are whores, all that good stuff that they like to do at the Combine. But Haas, I'll ask you right away, what just a general thought on the Combine? Like, what do you look for? You're probably one of the most like tuned into the NFL guys that I know. So what do you think about the Combine in terms of like, do you put any weight in it or very little weight or what?
No, I think it's a great way. It's definitely bigger than the Senior Bowl. It's a great way for like guys to make a name for themselves that aren't like, they come from these really obscure schools. Like you have guys from Central Michigan, like they come here and they put up big numbers and nobody's really has been aware of them. Like the Bowling Green tight end, who's probably going to be one of the first tight ends off the board after Tyler Warren. Like he's going to go to the Combine and put up some pretty gaudy numbers. And people are like, oh, who's this guy? And then they're going to look at his stats in college and realize he's really good. And so I think it's just a good way for people to be aware of some of the more high-end talent that, people aren't aware of.
Yeah, and it's always fun to see like how fast these people are, how high they can jump. But I mean, for me, like if I was an actual scout or GM or whatever, I would be using it to confirm what I saw on tape. Like if I don't like a guy's tape and he goes out and runs a wide receiver that every time I watch tape he's rounding off his routes, and all of a sudden he runs like a 4.39, I'm not putting him any higher on my board just because of that, because everybody's fast in the NFL. And I also think it's funny when I see these times, and as they've gotten maybe faster, or maybe it's just that they have a different person recording the times now, because we've had a lot more sub 4.4s over the last like 3 combines. That like I see these high school times for kids when they're coming up through the recruiting process, and they're like, he runs a 4.35. I'm like, so he would be one of the fastest guys in the combine right now, and there's like 10 of these kids that are this fast. No, they're those times are so false. So the only 40 times I put any stock into are the combine times, because at least it's the same track for everybody all the time. So at least it's some sort of like actual comparable number. But we'll get into
a level playing field.
Yeah. So we'll get into it though. So 15 Buckeyes get invited. We were just talking about beforehand. Somehow Josh Fryer isn't one of them, a 2-year starter at tackle, but we'll talk about that probably down the road in a future podcast when we get ready to actually preview the draft. But 15 Buckeyes, which if they're all drafted would tie the record, and if Fryer gets drafted, that would break the record for most in one draft, invited. And starting off with the big man at quarterback, Will Howard, going all the way down to our DBs. A lot of guys have a lot to gain. Like nobody besides Josh Simmons is being projected as a unanimous first-round pick. Ibuka kind of is at this point now too, which is kind of interesting to me. But who do you think coming into this combine, like first thought, who has the most, like who can really move up the draft board with it that you think has a realistic shot to do it? Like obviously, like a guy like Donovan Jackson isn't going to be able to do much to move up the board as an lineman. But what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, quarterbacks they don't really put any weight in the combines for quarterbacks other than like seeing how fast they're, just because like quarterbacks, the tape is what it is. It's hard to really improve your tape as a quarterback because you're there every play. You have a hand in every play. So it's Will Howard. I think it's set in stone that he's not going to really move up too much. I'm looking at really 2 guys, one being Travion Henderson and Josh Simmons. Mainly for Simmons being the injury. So if he can put in some agility and some footwork, I don't know what all he plans on doing with his injury. If he's still just going to do just benching and stuff like that, what he can. But Travion, what really, we've been saying it all year long, he's looked like the more explosive back and stuff. And a lot of these boards have Quinshon going ahead of Travion, which I really am having a hard time grasping. So I really think Travion can really rocket up some boards if he puts a high 40 time up there and so on and so forth. Defensively, I mean, Tyleik Williams is a guy that maybe if he puts up some monster strength numbers, that would be kind of, people realize how big of a beast he is. But man, we won a national championship and so on and so forth. But you know me, like at the beginning of the year, I was saying a lot of these guys I think are a little overrated, and I really wouldn't draft some of these guys, especially on the defense side of the ball.
I'm with you about Travion there because he's so fast. And if he runs sub 4.4, like especially like a mid, like a 4.35, I mean, you see it on film. He's got like called blow up the angle speed. He can F up, like you make it so you took the wrong angle. And if he actually like confirms that at the combine, I think he moves into the first round. I really do. So I'm with you. Like, he's got his one weakness I would say is vision between the tackles. He doesn't seem to like find the holes that well. He'll make a bad decision, just like run into somebody, and he's like trying to gain a yard, but he doesn't really have the strength to like do that. But other than that, like he's got, I think also at the combine, they go through those receiving drills. If he impresses in those receiving drills as well, I think he's like a perfect third down back.
Yeah. No, I partially him not being good in between the tackles was, I mean, Quinshon wasn't really great between the tackles either. It's just maybe because our offensive line was really not that good. We've talked about that before, but Abuka's I think is a lock for the first round just because of like Deebo Samuel's going to be traded. You have some of these other receivers that are on the trade market now, like T. Hagan. Who knows what happens in Cincinnati? So like a lot of these premier teams are going to still need wide receivers after this whole trade shakedown happens. So I think Abuka's probably a lock to be in the first round if I had to take a bet just on like gauging where the trade market's at.
Unless he runs like, I don't know if his 40 times that important because it's not his game. He's not a deep threat. But his cone drills and stuff might be a little bit important, and obviously going through the wide receiver drills. But I mean, like Pittsburgh also like desperately needs a go-to receiver, even though they probably need a quarterback first. But yeah, I think Travion has the most to gain. Quinshon, if he runs a good time, like I'm not a Quinshon guy in the NFL. I think he's had a bunch of skills that were like, I think the biggest part of scouting, moving from one level to the next, no matter what it is, high school to college to the NFL, is what were they just good enough at the previous level that made them really effective that they won't be at the next level. And I think Quinshon's power, like his power, I think he's a lot of his skills are he's just good enough at the college level that won't translate to the NFL. Like I can see him being a guy that just gets dumped for 3 yards every play he's in.
Is a good comp for him. I know he's better than this guy, but Master Teague, I just felt like
I don't think so.
Okay.
Master Teague was a pure straight line runner. He had no wiggle whatsoever. Quinshon has some wiggle, which is what makes his power so good, is that you can't quite catch him clean most of the time.
Trey Sermon?
Yeah, Trey Sermon's a good camp. I think it's a very good comp.
Yeah.
Pretty good out of the field too, catching the ball.
And Trey's probably going to be in the league for a little bit longer as a nice third string running back. Quinshon will probably be higher than that at the beginning of his career just because of fresh legs. But yeah, I don't see him having a very long, successful career, whereas Travion has that ability to be a premier guy.
Yeah, he could be. I mean, Travion could be. He doesn't have quite Jahmyr Gibbs' strength. That's who he reminds me of a lot, like the home run ability, the true speed. I think his medicals might be important too because he's had some injuries in the past before we kind of took him out of the bell cow role. Guys that can hurt themselves a lot now. Now on the opposite side of that, are guys this is more important for, I guess, because Travion's going the first 2 rounds for sure.
Yeah,
like you said, Buka as well. I think for me the big one is Denzel Burke because
he should be drafted.
It's not, but he's sticky, but he doesn't play the ball well. Like I don't think he's a starter in the league. But he also, if he runs bad, I could really see him going like 7th round, 6th round if he like runs a 4.5 something. Yeah, I think he needs to run in like the low 4.4s to show that he actually has the speed to stay with guys in the NFL. Because like his tackling comes and goes sometimes. Like sometimes he's a good tackler on screens, and sometimes he's a horrific tackler in the open field. Sometimes he's very, very sticky, but then that Oregon game happens and he's getting blown right by. He's been on a podcast and talked about the confusion that was going on in the secondary during that game that may have caused some of that. But like, I think I would need to see him run in the low 4.4s at least to even like consider drafting him. And Jordan, likewise, I think all 3 DBs, Jordan Hancock, Lathan Ransom, like they need to run well to show that they have the speed to stay in the NFL. Because I mean, they didn't get burnt bad, but Lathan, if I had a criticism of him here, it's that his angles weren't always great. But is that because of lack of speed or just taking bad angles? Because if it's lack of speed, then I don't know if you can do anything about it. Like you can try to help the angles, but if it's lack of speed, I don't know. So I think their 40s are all very important for them. And you're right, most of the defensive guys, I'll say that. Like if Sawyer and JT, I mean, D linemen aren't that important, but if they can run a good time, I think they can solidify themselves high second round, maybe first round. I like them. I like all the D linemen besides Ty Hamilton in the NFL. I think they'll be maybe not Pro Bowlers, but guys that can stick in the league for 10 years.
Yeah, me personally, if I was a GM, unless if like these guys put up crazy, combine stats. Cody Simon's also an interesting one because I think he really came on down the stretch, and if he puts up some good combine stats here, and people might realize he might be worthy of a 3rd round pick. But like, Jesus, me personally, I wouldn't pick anybody. I'd pick Tyleik Williams in the 2nd round. JTT and Jack Sawyer, I have beginning of the 3rd round. Ty Hamilton, late 3rd, maybe 4th round probably. I wouldn't draft Denzel Burke, really. I really wouldn't. Lathan Ransom, I'd pick. If Ransom puts up some decent numbers, I'd be willing to spend like a 4th round or 5th round pick on him. But I just think that these defensive guys don't, like you said, they're very good. They could have a very long career being good players. None of them have Pro Bowl potential. But that's why I wouldn't draft these guys as high as some of them are being mocked, just because they don't have any one trait that makes them stand out above the rest.
I'll fight back on that a little bit with JT and Sawyer. We saw basically after the Oregon game, suddenly they're getting sacks. I mean, JT ended up like 2nd in the country in total sacks with 12 and a half. So maybe it was just the system for like all that time, that it was just the system being too conservative, that they weren't getting all the numbers. And JT especially is so good against the run. He's so good at setting the edge that like I would take him. I would take him 1st round. I think JT could really we may not have seen the best version of him at Ohio State because of the style that they were playing until the playoff. But I do think I need to see him do some athletic things. Because also you hear how athletic he is, but I never see the get off like that much. But again, was that just him being conservative because they were playing like such a strong base to play the run first and then go to your pass moves for such a long time? But then, like I said, playoffs, what does he get? Like 5.5 sacks during the playoff run? Like that's elite. That's playing against elite tackles too. There's a bunch of 1st round tackles against.
Look, partially was because we were blowing those teams out and they could pin their ears back and they were in passing situation. Like the Tennessee game, Oregon game, they were passing all game long once they got down by 20 plus points. So I think that had a big part of it. They were 4-year starters for the most part, 3-year starters, JTT and Sawyer, and they had 4 years to put up good stats. And it seemed to me like they never put up gaudy stats like 5 stars at Ohio State that we've seen other guys put up. That's why I would pick them in the 1st round, because they never did that in 4 years. And other guys only played 3 years and they put up better numbers than these guys have.
Yeah, I mean, sacks seem to be kind of down though, even across the boards. But I mean, in 1st round picks that we've seen over the years, but they've been more athletic freaks. That's why it's probably important to them. And Tyleik, I think, who wouldn't want that in the middle of your defense? Like, I would love the Bengals to pick him.
Yes.
I don't think it's going to fall like to where they're picking. Like, he's probably not that good to go high enough as their 1st round pick, and he won't fall to their 2nd round pick. But it's like just a stone in the middle who I think has some pass rushing skills. Like, he's not just like the big fat guy who's just going to take up the blocks and that's it. Like, he can get in there a little bit. Plus, he has really good sense for how to bat down passes as well. Like, I think he could be a really good starter in the league for a long time.
Like, Tyleik and Travion are 2 guys that if they're there like 10 picks into the 2nd round, I'm trading up for them. Like Jeremiah Wusu-Koramoah fell out of the 1st round and the Browns traded up for him very nicely. They're one of those guys that I would like target as like a trade candidate, some team trading up to get him. I just see that potential for them. I don't really see that for these other guys. Obviously, they start slipping into the late 3rd round. But anyways.
Yeah. A couple guys we haven't talked about here for the combine. First with the O lineman. Some guys that do stand to lose a lot are Josh Simmons and Seth McLaughlin if their medicals don't look good. I mean, McLaughlin, I think, may have an uphill battle because that Achilles, I was thinking about that. I was like, man, he's probably not playing at all his rookie year, and that's just going to tank you because you just get lost in the shuffle when that happens.
Yes.
But he was so good this year. Like, somebody will draft him, I think, to give him a shot. Somebody that has, like, some long-term contract stuff they need to worry about with centers maybe. And then Simmons, he's being projected mid-1st round to high for, like, round top 10-ish now in some of these mocks, coming off the knee injury. Now, obviously, he had his ups and downs his junior year with us, especially with committing penalties. Then last year, he only played 6 games. He was really good in the 6 games. And the game against Mike Green, who from Marshall, who's going in the top 20 in most mocks, they shut him down. That seems to be what's launching him this high. But if his medicals don't look good, then something. I think he falls out of the first round. Then we could easily see that. And then Will Howard, we have to talk about. He will throw, but I think the more important thing for him is the interviews. He should ace these interviews, right? And that's the kind of stuff that can get you moved up to the side. I don't think he's a first round pick because I think the footwork's not consistent enough and the decision making is not consistent enough. But like Ryan Day says, when he gets the feet down right, he's about as good as we've seen here at Ohio State.
Dude, I know it's tough to gauge how fast, and that's a big thing for me at the combine is when you're watching these guys on the field and on tape, like when I watch an old game film, it's hard to tell how fast they really are. Like at times they look kind of slow because other guys around them are fast, and at times like they look fast and they end up being slow. Like this is a great way for me to like the 40 times are the most important because like it's hard to tell how fast they are on the field. But Will Howard all season long, how many deep balls were underthrown or off? Like he had some better ones in the playoffs, but that's I think what's holding him back is the deep ball ability. I don't think he's got a decent arm, but he doesn't have great downfield accuracy. Man, I like him as maybe a project, but I'd still take like a Quinn Ewers over it. I think Quinn Ewers has more potential than Will Howard. I mean, I know that's why he's higher than him, but
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I think short and mid accuracy is more important in the NFL than anything because now everybody plays this too high safety too, and you're not going to get many deep shots to begin with. And anticipation. It's the biggest thing in the NFL is pocket presence and being able to complete passes under pressure because you will be under pressure in the NFL. Like nobody's good enough to stop these kind of freak DNs all game, every game. So, we've seen him. Now, he had like good stats, though, against blitz. He had good stats kind of like across the board, really, in the end, because he was so hot from deep, like on his deep passes in the playoff. He was like 8 for 11 or something ridiculous, like on those deep balls, which is really, really good. But obviously, some of these guys are wide open, but also like that throw to Ibuka against Oregon is a freaking dime. Like, can't do it any better. One of the throws to the deep ball to first drive of the game against Tennessee was a dime. Like, those are great throws. So maybe he does. Like Day says, when his feet are set, but his feet aren't always set, and he gets kind of like, he has those weird mistakes too, like every game where he just gets like jittery back there. Can he like convince the team that those can be worked out? I wouldn't be able to be convinced by him probably, but he's a great guy, a great leader. This will come through in these interviews, and I think he's good enough that like you'd want him in your locker room and not worry. And then if he can come in, he also can run a little bit, and I love that in a backup quarterback.
yes. Like Seattle, I'm thinking of like situations like Seattle where Geno Smith has like one more year left. Like that's like a great landing spot for a guy like Quinn Ewers or Will Howard, where like they can just sit behind Geno, learning. You have no pressure of being a starter for the first year. Like hell, like a team like Houston, where CJ Stroud's the bona fide starter, but with their offensive line, if he goes down with an injury, a guy like Will Howard could sit there and learn and step in. Like I don't know. Will Howard is a great guy, and that's why these interviews are really kind of they like to play those games like you were saying, like the joke earlier about like some people think, oh, he has an ugly girlfriend. Does that mean he doesn't have any confidence and stuff like that? The whole money ball line. But Will Howard should ace these interviews. I could see him going late second round, and that's where I would pick him too if I didn't really have any holes anywhere and I wanted a good backup quarterback. He's not going to mess up off the field and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I said. Get a good guy in there. But yeah, so it should be interesting. Are there any? So you're a Browns fan though. With a top 2 pick, are you like just zero? Is Abdul Carter or Hunter? Are they going to like fully participate? I'm going to guess no. I wouldn't if I was them.
I haven't looked at who's going to participate. I mean, like I know like they locked in Travis Hunter as a cornerback. That's what they officially labeled him as, which is kind of interesting. As a Browns fan, I'm not a Browns fan anymore. Especially with them moving the stadium and them messing up the Deshaun Watson thing, I'm not a Browns fan. They'd have to get rid of Deshaun and keep the stadium on the lake for me to rejoin that fandom. But as a neutral NFL fan, the Browns should not draft a quarterback. Just like the Titans it doesn't look like they're going to draft a quarterback because it really wouldn't help them. Jesus, if Travis Hunter's there, you draft him. Abdul Carter wouldn't be a bad pick if Miles is going to be traded. Yeah,
I think
you're kind of screwed if you're the Browns either way. You're $60 million over the cap.
Yeah. I think Abdul's going number one. Like I think he's by far the best player in the. Like I have him here. Then I do have Hunter like the next, but he's a tier below because you don't know what position he's going to play. I don't know if he can be super elite at either, but he could play both a little bit, I guess. Like maybe he could be super elite. We'll see. Maybe receiver, but I think those two are by far the two best prospects like to come out this year. And then it gets, what do you need? But I think you guys, like you said, there's no quarterback that's gonna I don't think Ward or I like Shadur. I do. I'll put it out there. I like Shadur. I don't like the circus that comes with Shadur, but I like him. He's tough. He's very accurate. He throws with great anticipation. Like the kind of like everything that you kind of need, he can do.
Yes.
I don't think he's got the greatest arm in the world, but he's got enough arm. It's like Peyton Manning. I don't think Peyton had the greatest arm in the world, but he just had everything else was like that. And he is a little bit mobile, but man, the circus around him, I don't know if it'd be worth it. And the way his leadership is also very, very questionable. The things he said in the past, the way he said them. I don't know if I trust him to be the cornerstone of my franchise and command respect in the locker room.
No, this draft, it doesn't suck. I think there's nice pieces like Mason Graham from Michigan he'd be a really nice D tackle. The Browns picked him number 2 overall. I really don't think many Browns fans should be upset with that because they don't have a defensive tackle really that's worth mentioning. Will Johnson's a really nice cornerback out of Michigan too. Like Tyler Warren, there are the number one guys that. What's that?
I love Tyler Warren.
Yeah, the number one guy at every position. They're guys they're going to be contributors right away, and this is an interesting draft to see kind of where people move to get these quarterbacks. I mean, they're going to have some desperate teams, but the trading is going to be what kind of dictates who gets drafted where right off the bat, who trades up to number 1, who doesn't, So it's tough to predict, who goes where.
Is there any chance that these quarterbacks slide like was going on with Malik Willis and Pickett and all them that year?
No, because you had the 2 quarterbacks and that is it. There might not be another quarterback drafted in the first round other than those 2. So I can't see those 2 sliding outside of the top 10. I could see guys like Quinn Ewers and Will Howard. I could see teams being we're not drafting another quarterback until the 3rd round. Them just stockpiling everybody else and getting these other receivers is kind of a nice commodity in this draft. Guys like Luther Bird and stuff they're nice receivers and McMillan. So I could see the other quarterbacks sliding down into the 3rd and 4th round rather than these top 2 guys. I think they're locked to be in the top 8.
I like McMillan a lot too. If he runs well at the combine, if he decides to run, I think he could really go into the top 5 then. Because I think he's a very underrated after the catch. Everybody raves about all his other stuff except for his route running. He's in a lot of covered situations and he's just used his size to out muscle people. But after the catch, he's pretty nice. He's got some moves to him.
Yeah. What helps a lot of these guys is it's not a really deep class at any one position. So teams are going to kind of fill what they need, and every team's got different needs. So that's why I don't think there's going to be a run on quarterbacks or a run on wide receivers and something. I really do think that it's going to be a spotty draft of who goes where to what teams and what teams need what.
Yeah, man, I think one of them could. Jackson Dart also is a quarterback that's shooting up the rankings. He's the highest graded guy in PFF. There's a lot of advanced stats that like him a lot, but their weakness was their offense this year at Ole Miss. They was inconsistent, and I don't know if that's him or not when you have that kind of talent around you.
Yeah, and that's where I love Pat McAfee for stating after we won the national championship, him being why is nobody talking about Will Howard? Why is he not considered higher? Why is Jackson Dart considered higher than him and stuff? When Will Howard came from no talent at Kansas State around him, he puts him at Ohio State, he wins us a national championship, does phenomenal numbers all season long, elevates his play. Whereas a guy like Jackson Dart, who arguably had the most talented roster in football, they were projected to be overall talent-wise they did, and he lost he lost like multiple games because of his play, like interceptions. He just had 3 interceptions at bad times. So I think his play didn't elevate with the guys around him.
Yeah. What's killing Will, I think, is he led the country by far in completions to open receivers. Like it was like
Yes.
42% of his completions were like to wide open receivers, or maybe 42% of their throws were at wide open receivers, which that's absurd. That's obviously we have the most talent in the country in the wide receiver room, and you can't really double anybody, so that helps a lot too. So that could be part of it, but it's like you still got to make the throws. He hit guys in stride. We saw plenty of dots that he threw though into coverage that were like beautiful throws. You're like, oh, okay. Now I would text you almost every time when that happens. Like, is that Will Howard? Is that CJ Stroud out there?
Yeah.
But I see him going high. All right, but that'll do it for this quick look at the combine. Don't have to watch it on NFL Network, but if you do, it's kind of fun to watch. I think just watch people run and go through. I like watching them go through the drills more than I like watching the 40 even.
Yeah. The wide receiver one, and then the guy looks the wrong way and gets hit.
It's insane how good they are at catching that, because those are rockets coming in out of that machine, and they just
Oh yeah,
it's skill. All right, but hopefully the Buckeyes show out well. All 15 guys show themselves worthy of being drafted, and we can at least tie the record. And hopefully Josh Fryer, who I think is an NFL player on the bench, like not a tackle though. He's gonna play guard. Maybe swing out to tackle in a pinch, but he doesn't have the right measurements for tackle. But hopefully we can get to 16, and that would be freaking awesome to break the record and just to add something else to the Ohio State collection. But for the Haas, I'm just Matt. We're going to have some more Ohio State coverage, of course, in the future, but we're going to also maybe do a little sports around the country talk, or sports around Ohio at least, and we're going to do a little NBA here in a second. So check that out as well. But we will see you guys next time.
Hey, guys. Whoa, big gulps, huh? All right. Well, see you later.